Good morning, everybody. Michael the Maven here. Thank you for coming if this is your first time to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about some exciting announcements from CanonRumors.com. I'll put those links in the description. I had a video that came out earlier this year talking about why Canon will dominate in 2020. Many of you were skeptical, and from these announcements, I can say it's actually going to be better than I had initially anticipated, because there's cameras and lenses not on that video that are starting to leak out. In the past, I really didn't like talking about rumor cameras because we didn't know if they were real or not. But as the sources became more reliable, I tend to look at these more and give advice based on them, simply because it can help a photographer who's looking to upgrade plan his purchase. If he knows a great new camera is coming out in a couple months, he's not going to buy an older model, for example, or he might sell another camera to prepare for it. CanonRumors.com has a system, CR1, CR2, CR3, where CR1 is, yeah, this is probably not going to happen. It's unverified. 2 is maybe take it with a grain of salt. CR3 means this is almost imminent. And in the past, his CR3 ratings have been pretty accurate. And I also like that when he makes a mistake, he's not afraid to come out and correct it. I think most of us are willing to accept that information with a grain of salt for the planning purposes I mentioned. So I'm going to share with you the specs real quick, and then I'm going to give you some interpretation in terms of what I think this actually means. The more interesting of the two is the EOS R5 45 megapixel sensor with 5 stops of image stabilization. We have 12 frames mechanical FPS, 20 frames electronic FPS. It's also noted that we'll get a scroll wheel, that there will be no touch bar, there will be a live view video toggle switch, it'll be a bigger battery, capable of some type of 8K video recording. I'll have a note on that in a second. 4K 120 frames per second with 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. What is that all about? And we can expect an announcement sometime next month. Now, obviously, I want to state these are not official Canon specs. These are rumors, and so they could change. Canon Rumors has also recently published some information about the R6, which features a 20 megapixel sensor, also has IBIS, also has the 12 mechanical frames per second, the 20 electronic. It also has 4K 60 frames per second video, and both of them have new batteries. Let me give you some of my thoughts and interpretation on the R5. I posted a video on the ergonomics and usability of the EOS R when it first came out, and so many of you attacked me and came after me. We were very upset. You can go read the comments. And I want to ask you a question. Do you think Canon watches and listens to YouTube videos? The answer is absolutely, positively they do. And the reason is there are thousands of comments, likes, views. This is free marketing information. And when you look at the launch of the EOS R, they invited a bunch of YouTubers to come and help them promote it. This was part of their launch strategy. So absolutely, Canon is watching YouTube videos and getting feedback. There's very valuable information from tons of different YouTubers. When I made that video and a lot of people started attacking me, and I see that they fixed a bunch of these ergonomics, I feel kind of proud. I feel like I can take a little bit of credit for that if I see 6 things changed, So hate me at first, but in the long run, I hope you guys like what I'm trying to do with those ergonomics videos. Let's talk about some of the functionality specs on the R5. 45 megapixel sensor, full frame. It's not something we've seen in a mirrorless Canon camera. It sounds like this is geared to compete with the Sony A7R3, which is in that megapixel ballpark. Obviously, the A7R4 has more megapixels, but now Canon has IBIS. And the thing that's really interesting to me about this IBIS is that it appears to be synergistic with the lenses. That is something I haven't personally seen performed on a high level in any other camera system. Olympus tried to do it with the OMD EM1 Mark II, where they had image stabilization in lenses and the body, but the synergy was really only, maybe 1 stop of additional stabilization. When you have an IBIS with 5 stops of stabilization, and then you have a lens that has 3 or 4 stops, and you're able to synergistically combine those, to 7 or 8 stops of stabilization. That is insane. That means you're going to be able to take pictures handheld at 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, maybe if you're leaning against something, even longer. It's effectively eliminating the need for a tripod in many types of shooting situations. Obviously not multiple second shots, but for those longer exposures, 7 to 8 stops of true handheld stabilization would be unreal. 12 frames per second for a full frame 45 megapixel sensor. It would be leading in its class. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any other camera that does 12 frames per second full frame mirrorless. Obviously, we've got the 1DX Mark II, now the 1DX Mark III, and some DSLRs can definitely do it. I thought it was interesting that the battery has changed a little bit, even though there's a note there that says it's compatible with the 5D Mark IV. So it's the same type of shape, but something about the battery itself has changed in order to get those more frames per second. That's my analysis of it. In terms of video, I don't think it's going to be 8K 30 frames per second true video. I would be amazed if it were. Probably something more like a time-lapse video that's going to be constructed from images taken, with the timer kind of thing. I don't think it's going to be a real 8K video where you press record. And the reason I think that is because if you look at what's happening in the 1DX Mark III at 5.5K, it just doesn't feel like they would. I would be thrilled if they did, but to have true 8K video at 30 frames per second, that would absolutely create a ton of excitement if Canon decided to do this. 4K, 120 frames per second. There's no Sony cameras doing it off the top of my head. 5G Wi-Fi connection is very interesting. That's very intriguing. So what I think is going to happen is that this camera will allow us to download our images by Wi-Fi, not only to our computer, but the hardware will be there to put it in the cloud. Smartphones have been kicking cameras' butts for a long time because they have this connectivity to the internet. If there was a super fast Wi-Fi connection that you could connect your camera to the actual internet and you have a Dropbox account, now that becomes something very intriguing because it can do it at a speed that is manageable. You could set your camera up, you can upload your images to the cloud, or you can drop them to your computer, through Wi-Fi directly. This opens up a number of really exciting features. I am pretty pumped for this camera the more I think about it. The interesting thing about this is when we look at the nomenclature R5 or R6, that seems to follow the pattern of Canon's DSLRs. So the R5, it sounds like this is going to be the mirrorless version of the Canon 5D Mark IV. And when you think about the 6R, that kind of lines up with the 6D and the 6D Mark II. It would be interesting if there was a flagship, if it was called the R1, if there was an R7, maybe that would be a sports shooting camera. Maybe that goes along with the rumors that we're not going to see a 7D Mark III. And so we're starting to see the battlefield plans of Canon. And finally, after years of waiting, it feels like they are really coming to the fight. They're really bringing the innovation. What it looks like to me is Canon is actively going on the offense towards Sony. These specs look like they're attacking Sony. They see Sony as their #1 competitor, and Canon is finally saying, okay, we're going to do some things that you haven't done. And looking at the sensor tech that we saw in the 90D and the M6 Mark II, it's stepped up. It's a new generation. It's cleaner, it has better dynamic range. And so I'm really excited to see what that sensor holds. In any event, tons of really exciting things coming from Canon. We got a Fuji announcement coming. This could be a really great year for cameras. I would love to know what you guys think about the R5 and R6 rumors in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. I'll have more videos coming soon, and I'll see you next time.